Let's see, my husband works for Blue Cross Blue Shield. He's IT, he's a computer guy, which is really beneficial when you have your own business. You have somebody who does all your computer stuff for you and who I can yell at when it's not working right. And the rest of it, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story in my presentation. So I will save that, okay? My favorite thing to do is camping and fly fishing. So there you go. I recently
What's your burning desire?
Oh. My burning desire is to be of service.
And what don't we know about you?
Oh boy, I don't know. I think most of the time my fly fishing surprises people.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to ask questions already, okay?
Tell us about your book.
Okay, so I work with a leadership academy that actually was a referral from Stacia, great relationship. It's a year-long program, and one of their assigned readings was True North. I hadn't read True North before, so but when I did read it, I was struck by one particular aspect in the book, which is our leadership, and I think our leadership and who we are is demonstrated and shaped because of our story. So we all have a life story. And I'm like, well, famous people have life stories, right? But no, I have a life story, and you have a life story. And that life story shapes how you see the world, how you show up, the decisions you make. And he says in here, your life story defines your leadership. Ask what motivates them to lead. Authentic leaders consistently say they find their motivation through understanding their own story. Their stories enable them to know who they are and to stay focused on their true north. What emerges from these stories is that virtually all the leaders interviewed found their passion to lead through the uniqueness of their life stories, not by being born as leaders, not by believing they had the characteristics, traits, or style to lead, not by trying to emulate great leaders. So it got me thinking, what is my story? And I thought the best thing I could share with you today is a little bit about my story and what it has done to enable me to support and serve my clients, both in a group setting, organizationally, and individually. So the first part of my story is that I grew up in a middle-class family in California, and we were with one sister, and my dad was self-employed. So I remember he was a ceramic tile contractor. So as long as I can remember, we had business in our home. And what I knew about my dad was that he was self-made, barely graduated from high school. My mom and he were high school sweethearts, so she got him through high school, she likes to say, English mostly. And he was the football, of course, the football quarterback, the whole love story thing. And my dad never believed, he always believed that anything was possible. So that's somebody who came from a very dysfunctional home, I mean really messed up kind of history, and made a life for himself that was better than the one he grew up in by working hard, persevering, and number one, having the right mindset. So I talk a lot to my clients about mindset. There's a mindset that is growth versus fixed, meaning that my skills, my ability, what I know today is only a starting point. The sky's the limit. That's growth. Fixed means that I believe that what I have is all I'm ever going to have, and it doesn't get any better than that. It's like the movie, right? Is this as good as it gets? And what I know about growth and fixed mindsets is just like the abundance or scarcity, right? Do you believe your glass is half full, or do you believe it's half empty? Another mindset is learner and judger. So if I'm a learner, then I believe it's my responsibility to learn and grow and develop. If I'm a judger, then I'm going around shut down and closed-minded. So I learned a lot about mindset from my dad and my mom and the way they raised us. The second piece, the second sort of big chunk in my journey was I got married when I was just barely 21. So I was extremely young, didn't really have a clue what life was about, thought I had it all figured out. My then husband was in the Air Force, captain, so we ended up moving around, and we landed in Virginia, actually in Maryland at Andrews Air Force Base, and then he eventually got stationed at the Pentagon. And when we got divorced, my daughter was 3. I hadn't worked because I was a dutiful Air Force wife. And I hadn't worked really since we've been married because we moved around. And my work was always either part-time or for government contractors on base, whatever I could get. And so divorced, sold our home. I needed to find a place to live with my 3-year-old daughter, who I had custody of, and find a job to support myself. It was really scary. And my parents said, come home. I love my parents, and coming home was the idea of coming home was very appealing. But I knew that if I did that, I was going to go backwards, not forwards. And so I pushed through my fear, borrowed money for a first month's rent on a townhouse from a friend, did all these things that I never thought I had the courage or the wherewithal to do, got a job in downtown DC working for the American Symphony Orchestra League, and that was the beginning of my new life. And I remember looking at those 2 choices and thinking, I don't want to go backwards and I don't want to run away. We all know those points where we've made a decision that's running away from something. I want to move towards something. And I pushed through the fear and I did it. I talk a lot to my clients about that. So when you're faced with choices, you can either stay still, move backwards, or run away. And moving towards something puts you in a whole different dynamic in terms of creating the future that you want. So that was a big piece of my story, was staying, and as a consequence, met my new husband, had a great career, absolutely the right choice for me. At the time, I didn't know, and it was really scary. So I know what it's like to be afraid to make choices and to feel like you don't have any. So when I talk to my clients about their values, first of all, know your values, and you don't often know them until your values are in question, until you're up against that values conflict and you go, wait a second, what is it that I really value? Thank you. I value integrity. I value honesty. I value treating people with respect. This isn't that, right? So I need to do something about it. And so I talk a lot to my clients about knowing your values. And the last piece of my story is that in 9/11 happened. My husband and I were right in the throes of it, 15 minutes from the Pentagon. He worked on Capitol Hill. I worked on 14th and H, 2 blocks from the White House. So we experienced so much turmoil in that event, on top of the sniper who was hiding in his trunk, right, shooting people at the Home Depot I went to. And I reached a point, again, values, where I said, this is not how I want to live my life. I'm in a war zone. I want to go be with my family. See the difference? I wasn't running back to my family, I was moving toward, which was an entirely different dynamic. I really felt called to move to Arizona, and that's what I did 13, 14 years ago. And then I had the call, so I worked and did all that to start my own business. Again, I talked to my clients about, what are you being called to do? What are you saying yes to? And what are you saying no to? And how do you make decisions in that space? So when I've learned through School of Hard Knocks, this is not a victory story, this is a story of learning through making hard choices, making hard decisions, moving forward in the face of fear. And I was not, flowing through these experiences. I was struggling through them. And struggled my first year in business, mostly with my own mindset on how I was going to be successful. So I'm able to get right down in the mud with my clients because I've been in it. I'm not a consultant who theoretically knows, who has an MBA and a PhD and says, if you apply this knowledge to your life, it's going to be better. I know from practical application, from being in a business environment and a leadership environment and living my own life, and I share those stories and my mechanisms and my tools and techniques that I've learned with others. So that's a really important part, and that's why my burning desire is to be of service, because I want to make the world a better place, one leader at a time. Thank you.